a senior foreign policy writer at Newsweek. He joins us now live from New York. Tom, good to have you here with us on TRT World. Now, Moscow is, again, pessimistic about talks with NATO. Why hold them then?
I think the Russians certainly want to see how the U.S. and NATO are reacting to what Russia feels very serious about, which is essentially a re-understanding, a redrawing of the security architecture of Europe, especially in Eastern Europe. Obviously, after the fall of the Soviet Union 30 years ago, there has been NATO advancing eastward, getting new states of the former Soviet sphere of influence. And Russia wants to make it certain that there will be no longer business as usual, and Ukraine could not be a part of that. So I think that Russia very much is laying those cards on the table. At least, obviously, there is the hedging when it comes to the military side of things. We see military forces building up near the Ukraine border, and obviously the current conflict in Ukraine going on. I think that right now Russia wants to see if the U.S. and NATO will get serious about making serious commitments toward the re-understanding that security architecture.
Now, Tom, it hasn't even been a day since Russian and American delegations met in Geneva, and Russia has already started to move its military to the border with Ukraine. What kind of message do you think Russia is trying to send to the international community here?
The message that Russia is sending is that military options open for Russia, and that's not the case for the U.S. The U.S. has said, the Biden administration has said that military action, even in the event of an all-out offensive against Ukraine, is not really being explored at the moment. And certainly, it doesn't seem like that would be the case for other European members, whether it's NATO or EU members in the vicinity. So that Russia does have that option open. It said it's had that option open, even as a pledge that it will not stage any sort of invasion or any sort of offense against Ukraine. That does not preclude the possibility that something could happen within Ukraine that Russia could deem sort of as an entry into Ukraine, as sort of validating that sort of offensive to begin with. So I think that's the message that's being sent here, and that those troops are not going anywhere. And this crisis could will either extend or can continue to keep popping up until some sort of lasting solution is reached.
Okay, now, Tom, before I let you go, lately talks over Ukraine have been limited between the United States and Russia. What I would like to ask you is, do you think the international community, the broader international community, has a role to play here? For example, do you think countries like Turkey can do something to de-escalate tensions in the region?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when it comes specifically to the Ukraine issue, really, Russia and the U.S. are the top stakeholders, other than, of course, Ukraine itself in this. Obviously, NATO powers have a stake here, and we've heard the Biden administration say that they will not talk about Ukraine without Ukraine there, not talk NATO without NATO there. So, I think that these various formats at some point need to be consolidated into a lasting dialogue between the West and Russia and Europe. But certainly when it comes to Turkey, which obviously does have strong relations with Russia, while at the same time having issues with it in various conflicts in the world, these are welcome. I mean, we also, of course, have a major power like China, which hasn't been very enthusiastic to get involved in the Eastern European issues, as it has sort of had its own issues with the U.S. and Asia and its own vicinity, its own sphere of influence. So I think other powers certainly play a role here. But when it comes to the actual Eastern Europe and the actual Ukraine issue, it's really the U.S., Russia first, and then these other powers that certainly get a seat at the table because it is their immediate neighborhood.
All right, Tom O'Connor, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much.